Well, Mark, ladies and gentlemen, and the whole team at PopCon who've done a great job today in this much bigger chamber. Thank you for inviting us along and for all the support you give CDO, the Conservative Democratic Organisation. I should just say up front, I'm very sorry that Liz Truss lost her seat. Obviously, she's very key to PopCon. I did help her. It was only 600 votes. I would point out that the so-called independent candidate, James Bagg, got 6,000 votes and had some very interesting company. He got the European movement to come up to support him, David Campbell, Dominic Grieve. So that's what they were up to, and all I can say is keep battling on, Liz, because you are a great voice for the battle of ideas on both sides of the Atlantic. And also to Jacob, obviously, who's another great loss, but obviously he's got multiple platforms, including GB News, and he'll be back. Now, funny enough, this election has referred a lot to 1906, and I'm rather conflicted over 1906 because a certain Sir Henry Campbell Bannerman won for the Liberals, and Tunbridge Wells, actually, where I was brought up, it went Liberal in 1906, and it's gone Lib Dem now. So I would like to point out in his defence that his father was Conservative Mayor or Provost of Glasgow. So it does, politics does change in families. We've touched on it here. It was a terrible result. I call it a Conservative Chernobyl, a sort of meltdown of Conservative. I can't believe that safe seats all disappeared during this election. And I suddenly found myself going around the country helping people in so-called safe seats because there were no safe seats. And also to concede halfway through the campaign that you've lost it. I've never known that. So it was a terrible campaign. They should have listened to Isaac Levido. I think he was overruled, according to the Times, by allegedly Dowden and those that knew better in number 10 to have an early election. Well, that did not work out so well. Just on Sunak, Rishi Sunak, I mean, clearly he's a hard-working, competent guy, but I don't believe, and I've been saying this for a year, I've been warning, that, he doesn't play on the doorsteps. He's not a natural campaigner. He never actually really got involved in politics. He was never a councillor. He was sort of parachuted into North Yorkshire by William Hague and Globalists Unite. So I think the lesson in that, and it has been touched upon by others, that trust the membership to vote for leaders, because when you get someone like Sunak, who wasn't the second time round, no one voted for him, not even the MPs. It was a coronation. And Theresa May had a coronation as well, but when the members got a chance to vote, they voted for Cameron, and we got into government, and they voted for Boris. And, people point at Liz Truss, they'll try and blame Liz Truss, but remember, there was also, I think she's got great qualities, but there was also an anti-Sunak vote there. And that was, ignored, and this is where we've been left. I think it's, a serious fallout from that. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to dwell too much on the campaign. The actual campaigning failures, I think, are fairly obvious. What I want to touch on today, because it's less obvious, is about candidates and candidate selection, because I've done a lot of research into this over 3 elections, probably mainly because I've been blocked from standing in 3 elections. But I mean, look, I was lucky enough to be elected twice in the European Parliament. But what I want to say about candidate selection, I want you to know actually how it works, because it's symptomatic of everything that's gone wrong about our party, in my view. And I'm going to reveal the secrets of how Central Office fix candidate selection, so you know about this. And the first point is leave it as late as possible. You know, there were 160 candidates that were not selected when we hit the election. Now, Labour actually were well ahead of us, but Central Office regard this as an opportunity, not a threat. And why is that? Because they can bring in these things called emergency powers. And, you know, because of the pressures in the election, they can use emergency powers, which means they can actually boil down selections in safe seats, or previously safe seats, to just a choice of 3. And that's much easier to fix, which is their game, of course. Much easier to fix. You have your favored candidate, and then you choose 2 token candidates, or maybe weaker candidates that aren't as strong in that area. And therefore, you make your favored candidates look better. And that is the way they operate. You've also got the thing that they insist on the sift of CVs taking place in central office. Now, well, surely associations can do it themselves with a bit of oversight around the country, but no, they have to all traipse into central office and form an orderly queue, and you know, this is required. And why is that? Because then they can influence this sift. They often have their own pile of CVs that they favour, and they push those forward in this sift. And actually, if you speak to members who are involved in that, they say they are put under a lot of pressure. You know, if they're strong, they can stand up to it. But see, you know, central office has its favourites, and they use the sift process. But they've got you, actually. They've got you, because at the end of the day, thanks to Tony Blair and changing the law about elections, the nominating officer of the Conservative Party has ultimate power. You cannot be a Conservative candidate without the say-so of the nominating officer, and that you can't call yourself Conservative candidate, you can't use a logo, you can't use a description, so you cannot be a Conservative candidate. And what this means, and there's a case, you know, Dan Hannan, and I'm so pleased he's in the Lords, he's a wonderful speaker and has done so much for Brexit, but he was in the running for Aldershot in 2017. This has been going on a long time, and if you remember, the Times reported on this, that the Aldershot Association was in central office saying, we want Dan Hannan. And they said, no, you can't have him. And they stopped it. And basically, if the association had carried on, they would have taken the power away from them. They take over the entire association. And then ultimately, the nominating officer decides who the candidate is. So they have ultimate power. There's a number of other ways that they fix things. And one of them is the way that you're categorized as a candidate. And there's some good people here, I know some of them, who have been turned away or been hit by some of these categories. Categories like deferrals and development, and, you know, more training is needed. I personally was deferred, which meant I could apply anywhere. I was on the comprehensive pass, except I could apply nowhere because the candidates committee blocked me from standing every 3 months. And, you know, if I wasn't nice about Rishi Sunak, that was his criteria, then they would keep the deferral in place. And ultimately, it was too late to do anything about it. But I'm not alone. And I only raise it because there's so many good people that you don't know about who've been deferred this way. And this is a cop-out. All this, you know, why do people need all this training? I mean, I'm sure you know, central office probably actually gets a big budget for training all these people. But, you know, my local chairman of my local association, former chairman, you know, he was blocked from standing because they wanted him to do lots more training. Well, he's run an association, he's raised tens of thousands with the association, you know, he's become a councillor. How much training does he need? But this is all part of fixing things. And some very good candidates have been stopped. But again, this is about fixing. Why is it? Because they don't want good candidates getting in the way of those they prefer. You know, they use all these devices to stop people getting in the way, because the last thing they want is a good local candidate or, you know, someone that can match their preferred choice. And I'm afraid the reality is that the selection procedure is corrupt. I don't use that word lightly, it is corrupt. And you have a self-serving cabal, a mafia, as a senior Tory put it, that is running this. And if you read Nadine Dorris's book, The Plot, and if you're interested in politics, please read it, because it is revelatory and very serious. And in my experience, it is real, it's not fiction. You know, this is very, very serious. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was a focus on candidate selection, which in this election became, you know, very serious, including the excellent Lord Frost, you know, was caught up in this. And the point is, you know, that is unacceptable. So what are we going to do about it? So I'm just going to finish by giving you what CDO is putting forward about party reform. And we call it the 7 steps. We're going to ask every leadership candidate to sign up to the 7 steps, to sign up to a new constitution, which John Strafford has been mentioned. He's helped write that. We've got a working team that's put that together. We've got it nearly ready to go for the leadership candidates, and we want to clear out central office. We have a plan. They stopped mentioning the plan. Well, we've got a plan. So, ladies and gentlemen, the 7 steps, very briefly. Firstly, we want an elected party chairman. Now, why do you have an elected party chairman? Because an elected party chairman will represent you, Conservatives, to the leader, not the leader to you, not be a patsy to the leader. And this is very relevant because in 2017, I mean, I asked Patrick McLaughlin, the former chairman, I said, is it true you weren't consulted about the general election being called by Theresa May? And he said, yep, that is true. And he said, well, he said to the Prime Minister, had you consulted me, I would advise you not to do it. And he would have been right. But that is how low the esteem is from someone who's just a patsy of the Prime Minister. But if they're an elected leader, or elected chairman, then they have a lot more power and stature. And we wanted we want an AGM, we want annual meetings, and we want the head of candidates to be elected as well, to present a report about candidates and how they're getting on. And if they're not good enough, then fire them. So electing is important. The second point, party constitution. We want 1 member, 1 vote through this AGM. I think that's very important, and you can amend the constitution with a 60% majority. Third point, which is what we've been touching on, constituency associations should have the rights to determine who their candidates are. And they should be able to choose an MP and to get rid of an MP, to deselect them too. And central office should have a very minor role in this, apart from eliminating the sad, mad and bad. You know, that is really what their role is, a quality control check, basic checks before you get to that point. They should not be in the business of fixing everything to the detriment of many good candidates. The fourth point is a spring conference, which is a grudge conference, March, where, you know, nothing much happens. There's a convention, but we want to turn it into a policy conference, where ministers or shadow ministers now will come along and listen to members about their policy ideas. There's no commitment, but they will listen. Now, policy matters, as I'm sure you'll know. CPC, I got involved in policy, and that's how I sort of got into conservative associations. So a policy conference, I think, will to re-energize. Remember the old conferences of old where you had these amazing debates and they printed all the associations, all the resolutions they had and all sorts of policy. All of that's gone. It's like a sales conference now, party conference, and you get people back. The party conference, by the way, should be run more by volunteers, not for money, not in expensive places. CDO had a conference in Bournemouth, which went really well. I love Bournemouth. What a great place to have a conference. Let's go back to Bournemouth, shall we? Sixthly, election of party leader, again being touched upon. It is important, but this should be within the main constitution. You've got the 1922 committee with some strange powers. At one point, by the way, in 2016, you only needed a proposer and a seconder to stand for leader. Last time, it was 100 MPs you needed. And these are the same rules that get moved around by the 22. So it should be part of the main constitution. And finally, we need a constitutional commission to look at all of this. And I think that is well overdue. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's our 7-step reform with a new constitution, the detail of it, and we're working on this plan for central office, so watch this space. So thank you for listening, and please do support CDO. It's on the website, and thank you again, PopCon's, for this excellent conference. Thank you. Yes.